Well, it has been almost 1 year since COVID-19 forced businesses to close and Americans to stay home in hopes of curbing the virus.
The idea was to save lives, but in some cases it put people at risk for another danger: domestic violence. Several national studies on the issue found domestic violence went up when Americans went into lockdown. The National Commission on COVID-19 and Criminal Justice says those reports went up just over 8%. News 6's Carolina Cardona talked to one UCF professor who was a part of that research.
If we look at different data sources over the last 20 years or so, we had seen declines actually in domestic violence. So what I will say is that the pandemic has set us back in terms of our ability to address domestic violence.
UCF professor and Criminal Justice Department Chair Catherine Kaukinen is one of the authors of a new report detailing the effects of the pandemic on domestic abuse.
It has shown that the rates of domestic violence during the pandemic, particularly after the lockdowns, rose about 7 to 8%. So we estimate, or we would guess, that this is sort of a tip of the iceberg, that this is the floor of what we're experiencing, that many women might have been experiencing domestic violence and not sought help during the pandemic.
The report states it's unclear what exactly caused the increase, but lockdowns and pandemic-related economic impacts likely magnify the factors typically associated with domestic violence, such as increased male unemployment, stress associated with childcare and homeschooling, and increased financial insecurity.
Even though we're seeing an increase and it's been slow, the numbers still don't reflect what's happening in our community. Domestic violence is still completely underreported.
Michelle Spurzel, CEO of Harbor House of Central Florida, says the organization saw a greater need during the summer of 2020.
Where we're seeing the biggest need for people in our local community is that we saw a big increase with the number of people who are living with the abuser, who needed access to services, and they didn't need housing.
She says services from their protection attorney program. Professor Kaukinen says economics also plays a major factor.
There's some estimates that the economic impact is going to last upwards of a decade. And so things like chronic unemployment, lack of access to education because of income deficits are going to continue for many women. And that's going to have long-term effects for women and children who are attempting to leave and end violent relationships.
We need to continue to let people know that it's okay to reach out for help, that it's not your fault. You shouldn't be ashamed, and love does not hurt.
In Orlando, Carolina Cardona, News 6.